Hey y'all, so as you can tell by the title of the video, we are going to be talking about contracts that I've done over the years. I've been a travel nurse, I think about 4 years. Y'all probably know more than me, better than me. But I've been a travel nurse for about 4 years and I have done a lot of contracts over the years. So somebody put a comment in one of the other videos about going over my experience at certain hospitals, good or bad. And so I had to kind of narrow it down to like the ones that I think people will probably find most beneficial to hear like my experience. So let's just go ahead and get into the video. So the first hospital I am going to talk about is actually here in Atlanta where I live at, and it is called Emory. I would rate that like a 5 out of 5 for my experience, mainly because it was where I stay at. You know, if you travel a lot, it's nice to be able to find something that pays decent money where you actually live at, so you don't have to be paying extra expenses for, you know, traveling and accommodations, you know, rent and all of that stuff. Like all of my money just literally went to the place that I lived at. So I would rate it 5 out of 5 just on that experience alone. But then also too, Atlanta is like a very popular city. It's a lot to do. So if you're the type of person like when you go to different travel places, you want to like explore, Atlanta is a great place for traveling. I will say, so when it came to the ratio, it was 1 to 4 to 5. Very rarely did we have 6. Like if I floated to another unit, typically I was floating because somebody called off on the other unit, but I would mainly stay on my cardiac unit. And if we were staffed appropriately, like we would have 4 to 5 patients, but the acuity of the patients were not high in my standards. Like these would be patients who are going to get maybe an echo, stress test, maybe a TAVR at the most, but they were like cardiac patients, but not like at the stage of their journey where they're going to get like a cabbage or something like that, something that is very intense. Excuse me if I'm saying there were cardiac units that I floated to that did have like a higher acuity of cardiac patients, but this one for the most part was easy. The staff were cool. Majority of us were the majority of the people there were either travelers or they were PRN. They really didn't have any staff, and then maybe day shift. And then the manager were cool as well. Like anytime I needed my schedule changed or anything like that, like I never had a problem. And I actually ended up staying there for a whole entire year. I would have stayed longer, but that's when I started transitioning to get ready to go to California. So I just went ahead and found another contract, but in California that time. But I would rate it as a good experience. Like I said, a 5 out of 5. When it came to pay, I don't think it was the best, honestly. For Atlanta, I was barely making $2,000, but because it was somewhere where I actually lived at, it wasn't like I had any extra expenses. Like I was still able to do what I needed to do. Like this is $2,000 a week, so that's still not bad. But in terms of like Atlanta, because it is expensive to live here, when it comes to housing, especially depending on where you live at. And then there's also a lot of traffic here too. So even if you live like further out in like the surrounding areas around Atlanta, you still got to remember that you have to come into the city and bypass that traffic. And not even just into the city, like even around Atlanta. Like I've worked out far like 2 hours away from Atlanta and still had to encounter traffic. So I would say the pay in comparison to the cost of living, I don't think it was worth it for that contract, but I took it because I live here. Now, if you don't live here and you don't have like, you're not able to find cheap housing or at least find a place that is close to your hospital, I wouldn't say what I was getting paid would be worth it. But y'all know contracts around these days are not really the best, but $2,000 for Atlanta to me, especially if you have another place to take care of in another state, I don't think was worth it. But when it came to the staff, the acuity, the hospital, the patient, you know, to me, that's why I ended up staying there a whole year, because I really enjoyed it. And then it was a lot of people who look like me. You know, you can go to a lot of these hospitals and like, I'm the only black person. I mean, you just do what you gotta do. Not do what you gotta do, but you move how you move, but it feels different when you are around people that look like you. So that is Emory. So next on the list is Novant. I would rate that, this is in North Carolina, I would rate it a 1 out of 5. This was actually the first travel contract that I've ever done, and the first and only contract that I've done where the ratio was 1 to 7. When I got there, it was like dead winter time, like snow, it was gloomy, it was very depressing. That also played a part into it. but also too, like there were no staff except for the manager. At least I always work night shift. I've never worked day shift except for like on a strike, but that was one time. I am a night shift nurse through and through. So on night shift there were no staff. We were all travelers. We had 1 to 7. This was on a med surg unit, but these patients were so sick, like extremely sick. It was a unit where we didn't have resources. I remember I had to walk to another, and these are like big, this is a big hospital and big units where things are like spread out. I remember having to walk to another unit because I couldn't get no normal saline. So you know, when you gotta go to another unit to get something and it's busy on your floor, like that just takes up more time. But they had 1 to 7 patients most nights. The manager was even coming in and staying at night to take on patients, not like a full patient load, but he would take on like 2-3 patients. But he was super cool. So I would say the staff were cool because it was all travelers. We never had any problems. The management was cool. Like I never see managers come in and actually take patients. Like that's how bad it was. When it came to my schedule, it wasn't bad, but I was working a 48-hour contract. The pay there was okay. This was during like the height of COVID, so they was trying to play with me. When I think about it, I actually went back and looked at my check to see how much I made, and they were paying me $2,500 4 days a week. This was the middle of COVID. I say the height of COVID, so the beginning. Yeah, it was the beginning of COVID. So at that point, you know, contracts were paying really high. And I remember calling my recruiter because it was just getting overwhelming. I'm pretty good with like handling my stuff. Also, this was the first contract as a, this was my first travel nurse contract. For those who y'all do not know, I only was a staff nurse for like 16 months, and then I started being a travel nurse. So this was my like sink or swim moment. And thankfully I did swim, but I hit my recruiter up probably like 2-3 weeks into my contract, and I was like, oh yeah, I cannot do this. I'm ready to leave. They got me taking 7 patients. We don't have no resources. The patients is heavy. Literally an hour later, she called me back talking about they are able to increase your rate and they want you to stay. It went from $2,400 to $3,600, which lets me know these companies be playing. Like if you don't ask, they're not gonna say anything. But even then, during COVID, $3,500 for 4 days and you got 7 patients was still not enough. When I tell you, I finished that contract, but when I say I ran out of there, you cannot get me to look back. I still go through and look and see what the hospital is paying. And they're in that state, that hospital in particular is paying some of the highest rates only in that state. Not that the rates are good, but within that state, if you look around, that particular hospital pays the best. And I see why, because it's probably still a mess. But I would rate it a 1 out of 5. Do not recommend. I would not go back. The staff, like I said, the pros of it were the staff were cool. The manager, the only one that I really dealt with, but I didn't have any problems with management. Staff were cool, and then I still talk to people this day that I actually met on that contract. So it's nice when you get to go to a contract that's not the best, but then you also leave knowing somebody, befriending somebody, and building a relationship. The cost of living there, I would say, was moderate. I think I was probably paying $1,600. I moved around a lot on that contract. I think I moved to three different places while I was on that contract, but none of them were crazy. But also too, I didn't have a home. I ended up just leaving Florida and renting out my house, and I didn't have like a home base to be able to pay for stuff. Well, I mean I did, but I didn't. But money was, all that money I was pocketing, so it wasn't bad. But when I think about how they was playing me on that money, like, no. And it was probably the agency as well, or it was the agency, not necessarily the hospital. And don't mind if I'm looking over here in my notes. I'm just trying to make sure I'm covering everything, but I would not recommend it. You know, they have a lot of different locations everywhere, but that particular location, I was just like, yeah, I'm good. So let's move on to the next one. All right, so the next one I'm going to talk about is Kaisers in California in particular, because they do have Kaisers all over, but they definitely have a lot in California. So I worked at several different Kaisers, and more so in the NorCal area, and I would rate it, I would say a 4 out of 5. Now, California is its own experience. A lot of those states over there, California, Oregon, Washington, they kind of do stuff the same over there, but I would say 4 out of 5 because the ratios were wonderful. 1 to 3, very rarely. I probably can count on one hand how many times I had 5 patients, but like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 while I was over there, I worked on just a regular telemetry unit. I worked on a cardiac step down, you know, where I was getting post-op like day 2, day 1, depending on how they did in the ICU, cabbages, just very intense surgery, cardiac surgeries. And then I also did med surge. So when I was working on the step down cardiac unit, I only did 1 to 3 patients. I would say the staff were very supportive. They were nice. I never had any issues with staff. However, I would say I worked on a unit where basically I was like float pool, because every shift I would be getting floated. The staff made it very clear that they did not want any travelers there. And they would talk about us in front of us, but it was never, I don't know how to explain it. It was never like a mean type of, we don't want you here. It was more of a like geared towards Kaiser, like Kaiser is not giving us hours and they rather pay y'all more money, or however they was viewing it. But basically they were mad at Kaiser that we were there, but they weren't necessarily mad at us for just doing our job. Like, I never got an unfair assignment. Nobody ever treated me mean. People always helped out. Like, they had the best resource nurses. Like, I never felt a certain type of way, but they definitely let it be known, like, oh, we don't want travelers here. But never in a, you know, like I say, in a way where I felt uncomfortable, or I felt like they was just trying to like get over or be mean or be rude. Management, I did have one issue with a manager because my patient fell. I think I did a story time on that, and she like blew it crazy out of proportion. Like, that had never happened to me before. And she was just being real rude and nasty about it. But outside of that, like, management, I had never had a problem with. Let me think. Acuity of my patients, like on a cardiac unit, cardiac step down unit, you know, the acuity is going to be high. But like I said, they have resource nurses over there. So anytime you feel like you're behind, you can pull on your resource nurse. Or 9 times out of 10, they had good resource nurses where they were basically looking at what you got going on, and they were already ahead of the game. Like, hey, Shannon, I see you got a patient who coming up from ICU. I'm gonna go get the room set up, take their vitals, do their admission while you passing your meds type thing. Like, it was very a lot of togetherness, like a lot of people, like a lot of just like helping you out so you don't fall behind, regardless if you were a traveler or if you were staff. So I did enjoy that. Also, lunch breaks, you get an hour lunch break, and it is mandatory. You cannot refuse it. Every single lunch break, I used to go in my car and fall asleep and take a nap. When I tell you, the best game changer for night shift, when you can go take a 4-hour lunch and you cannot take your phone. They like give you like, give me your Avera or whatever they might use, and they literally are taking care of your patients the whole entire time while you're gone. If you have a rapid, ain't no calling you talking about, hey Shannon, what's going on with your patients? Something like, they're handling it themselves. So I love that. Then also the weather in California. If y'all go back and look at my travel videos in California, like, I feel like I was probably the most happiest ever being a nurse in California, because the weather was just beautiful. The trails were beautiful. The beaches were beautiful. Hiking, like, I just love, even talking about it, y'all can see, like, I'm happy about California. It was truly a great experience, and I do recommend that everybody go. However, go when they are paying, because next is the pay. The pay was decent. I was getting, the most I got paid in California was $3,400. Now I'm seeing stuff for $3,000, even less. And to me, honestly, that is not worth it. Unless you are going with somebody where you can split the bills, or you don't really have like a home base where you got to pay for bills back at home or a lot of responsibilities. I don't think that it's worth to go to California unless they are paying true California prices. And when I say true, I'm talking about like 38 and above. And honestly, I seen that like one time. It's like a hit or miss. So I do recommend going, but if they are not paying, I feel like you're either going to be making less money or you're going to break even, because California is also very expensive. That gas is like $6-7. The tax is high over there. The food is high over there. California, the housing is high over there. Renting a car was high. Like, California is not a cheap state, even if you are bringing home $3,000. I did make a little bit of money coming over there, but I would not go back over there unless I was going with somebody, or I just didn't have a home to pay for, because it just wouldn't be worth it. Or unless you were doing PRN. You can make a lot of money doing PRN, but I'm gonna be honest, I tried to get a PRN over there and it was so difficult, like for me to even pick up shifts. So maybe it just wasn't my time or my luck, but I definitely would not go over there to do a contract. I would go over there to be like PRN, because what they paying now to me is not gonna be worth the time and the money that I would be bringing home to just be over there. I did stay over there for 6 months. So I did like it. I really, really did enjoy it. But as far as the hospital system, oh, I also say this too. Kaisers are known to float their travelers. So one hospital, the one that I was on a step down unit, I only floated 2 times in that whole entire contract. And these were like 13-week contracts. The one that it was like a med surge, every single shift I would be floated. Maybe like out of the 13 weeks, 5, I would actually stay on the unit that I was supposed to be on. But what they'll do is, because they work 8-hour shifts there at that hospital, because I am night shift, the next shift that comes in is at 11. So the travelers work 12 hours. The staff only work 8. And so I will come in from 7 to 11. And then when the people coming in at 11 come in, I will give them my patients, and then I will go to get floated to another floor. It was not horrible. It was just mentally exhausting because, like I said, you have a lot of resources. You have a lot of help. By 11 o'clock is not a lot of meds to pass, but it's still remembering so much information. Like if I was on a med surge floor twice within that night, I could have up to 10 patients that I have to remember this information on and give report to. And so I would say I did not like it. I pressed through because like it wasn't a bad assignment, but I could just imagine like if it was heavy or we were in any other state where, you know, you don't have the resources and support, I definitely would not want to do it. But it wasn't that bad because I did. But they are known for floating their travelers. And like I said, it's a hit or miss. The one hospital I worked at where I was on a step down unit, I rarely ever floated. But my friend also traveled with me there. And on her unit, she was getting floated every day. So it was probably just my luck, because then the next hospital I went to, I was literally floated every day. So I will say that is a con about it as well. So that's pretty much it. Let me make sure I did all my talking points. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I did enjoy I made some really good friends over there, people that I still talk to this day. Like I told y'all, the weather was beautiful. California is it's just a vibe. I really do love it, but only if they pay it good. So let's go on to the next one. All right, so the next hospital I'm going to be talking about is Avera in South Dakota. I would rate it, I put 2 out of 5 on here. And only because it was not a difficult assignment. I was on a renal floor. Renal people get really sick. All that dialysis, liver failure, all of that, they be there. They had patients who were basically like there for a while. But it wasn't heavy. The ratio was 1-to-4, so it was always doable. I never had nights where I just felt like I was overwhelmed or I wasn't able to catch my breath if it was like a busy night. It was an easy assignment. Why I rated it a 2 out of 5 is because the staff, they made it very known, and this was like a mean, like, I don't want y'all to be there. They got a lot of travelers fired. The management, the first day we came in, the educator was like, yeah, so the staff does not want y'all to be here, and I know that, and I'm just trying to change the culture of it. Like, why would you tell travelers that on their first day? We had like a second meeting because I guess they were just trying to get an idea of like how we felt, and if we felt like we were being treated right, and if we had any concerns, because it was literally that bad. Now, this was this particular unit. If you go on the Facebook groups and you type in this hospital, it actually has a lot of good reviews. So when I was doing my research, I thought that it was going to be a good experience, and that's why you have to go like, just go off of your own experience and not necessarily what everybody say, or vice versa. Like, take in all of the information, because I thought I was going to have a good experience, and then turned to come out, I didn't. I didn't necessarily have a bad experience, but it was one of those contracts where you felt like you was walking on eggshells, because people were getting fired left and right for like petty stuff. I think I did a story time on like this actual hospital where somebody got somebody fired because she was taking her 15-minute breaks, and she was a good nurse. She was taking her 15-minute breaks, but she was a smoker, and the staff did not like that. So they was making it seem like she was going to take smoke breaks like every hour, when in reality she wasn't, and they ended up getting her fired. So the staff were mean and petty like that, and the management has to approve it. So I just grouped the staff and the management together. They were not, I'm not gonna say everybody, because they had charge nurses who were cool with us, but like travelers, like we get together, we talk, we try to look out for each other. And the different things that other travelers were going through, it was just like, yeah, every time we would walk in there, we had this running joke like, oh, they let us come back today because people were getting fired so much. So I'm rating it a 2 out of 10 because of the staff and how petty they were, but the acuity was not bad. 1 to 4 patients was not bad at all. I believe the pay was good. What did I rate it? I said the pay was 5 out of 5. I think I was getting paid 37. I think I was getting paid $3,700 a week, and the housing wasn't expensive. Now I was paying $1,800, but I'm very particular about my housing. You already know I had plenty of stories, and so I try not to skimp when it comes to like the cost of something. As long as I'm comfortable, I'll pay something reasonable. But $3,700, and it was a 48-hour contract, was not bad at all. It was just the staff, and that really will make or break a contract, because we was in there minding our business, doing our job, being nurses, but to come in and then also have to feel it from your staff is just like, it makes you not want to be there. And they end up cutting my contract short. But when they cut me short, I promise you, y'all, I was so happy to go. It was dead in the middle of winter, so it was snowing, it was cold. It was no black people there at all. Like, it was nothing. What do you do in South Dakota? I used to ask the staff, like, what do y'all do? They had like bars and stuff. They did have like the Badmans and stuff, but that was like further away from the hospital that I was at, like the mountains and hiking trails, but it was literally nothing to do there. I would rate that experience a definite like 2 out of 5. Pay was good, but the experience in itself, like, yeah, I would never go back there. I'm trying to think. And that was a 13-week contract. So yeah, that is my take on that hospital. So let's get into the next one. All right, so the last one I'm going to talk about is SLU in St. Louis. I actually just did a contract there, and I really enjoyed that experience. Now, it is a trauma hospital, so the acuity of patients, I was on an ortho trauma unit. The acuity of the patients were very high. We're talking about patients who are in motor vehicle accidents, domestic violence, gunshot wounds. It's not a typical ortho floor where like, yo, 90-year-old grandma fell and broke her hip type situation. Like, these patients were very heavy, but the ratio was 1 to 4, and it was mainly travelers. A few of their charge nurses were staff, but everybody was so cool. Like, from the nurses to the CNAs to EVS, like everybody was cool. Even like the management was cool, and that will make or break if you want to stay at a particular hospital or not. Like, when the culture of the hospital is good, when it feels good to walk on your unit, when you know you're gonna have support. And this is St. Louis. They don't have mandatory like lunch breaks and stuff like that, but we would be able to take our lunch breaks together, or when we wanted to. Hey, I'm about to go look out for my patients. Like, the charge nurses was helping. Like, it was a very good culture. I definitely would rate it 5 out of 5. The pay was okay. They were paying me $3,100 a week. This is after taxes. $3,100 a week to stay there. Housing, I believe I was paying $1,800. So I mean, I guess it's okay. I've done vlogs on like where I stayed at. If you've seen the video, like, it was decent. Like, I don't try to stay in anything that makes me uncomfortable. The last time I did that, y'all know how that situation went. I ended up getting a hotel. So if I stayed there, then it was pretty decent. But the cost of living wasn't bad. I did go in the wintertime, and I know it's a lot of stuff to do in St. Louis, but I didn't do anything because it was snowing, it was rainy, it was gloomy, and I just didn't want to do anything but be in the house and go to work. And I did work a 48-hour contract. If y'all hear that snoring back there, that's my dog. But I did work a 48-hour contract, but I would definitely rate it a 5 out of 5. Like, between the ratios, the travelers, really that was it. The ratio, the travelers, and the pay. I would definitely go back to that hospital. The only thing is, I would probably take like a summer contract just so that I could actually get out and explore. Because when you take contracts in the winter, in winter states, if the unit is not good, the hospital is not good, it's like, what do you have to look forward to outside of your check? And I like to go out, I like to go hiking, walking, I like to explore the cities that I'm in. But when the weather is not right, I don't want to do anything but go to work and come home and go to sleep. So the SLU in St. Louis, I would definitely recommend that. 5 out of 5. Yeah. So yeah, y'all, that's the end of the video. Y'all comment down below what hospitals that have y'all went to where y'all had good and bad experiences. I really want to use this as like a resource for people who are traveling they do have like, you know, Facebook groups where you can like type in an actual hospital and see what people are saying about that hospital from their experience. But I guess like something in like video form where we can all reference when it comes to traveling. When I say I've done so many contracts, I really had to narrow down the ones that I felt like, I don't know, had like a big impact on me. Like I either really liked them or I did not like them at all and I didn't want to go back. I haven't had, out of those two, those were the only two hospitals, Novant and Avera, that I would not go back to. But every other place, even if like the staff were acting a certain way, I haven't had any like horrible assignments. For the most part, I work in some decent hospitals, maybe hospitals where I necessarily wouldn't want to go there if I got sick, but I would still work there type of situation, if y'all catch my drift. So yeah, let me know what y'all think of this video. Let's chat down in the comments. Let me know if I forgot anything in regards to like each of those places that I worked at that you might had a question about, and I will see y'all in the next video.